The PC-98 era is the most mysterious era of Touhou. While yes, it is the beginning of the series and it has introduced many characters, however, a majority of all the characters we just never see again. It's also sadder that the PC-98 series is known by few in the fandom and beloved by fewer. I always had a soft spot for the PC-98 era, just so much potential in the characters that was just missed by Zun. However, I am thankful for what we have, like purple-haired Reimu, Mima, Rikoto, and the jamming FM synthesis soundtrack. However, you cannot forget that this era has a story, and that story of the PC-98 era is a bit different to the Windows games, so I think it's worth documenting the era to the best I can, aka me reading off the wiki. So, I think it's logical that we begin with highly responsive to prayers. It is the first game in the series and introduced our favorite lovable rude shrine maiden, Reimu Hakure. I am going to assume that she was hired as a shrine maiden shortly before the events of Highly Responsive to Prayers. Anyway, something had managed to wreck up the Hakure shrine, and Reimu wasn't very happy about that, so she charges through a gate to another world to give some justice to whoever wrecked the shrine. After that, there is literally nothing about the story in-game. I mean, Reimu did go and beat up Singyoku, Yogan Magen, Mima, Ellis, Kikuri, and depending on where you go in the game, Sarial and Kongara. At the end of the game, it is implied that Reimu gave justice to whoever destroyed the shrine. There are endings like the Yin Yang Orb, which accompanies Reimu as her weapon throughout the game, transforming into a fairy that can grant wishes, or Reimu leaving from somewhere and then an explosion happening. Even the wiki says that these endings are difficult to understand. I guess that's kind of the magic of Highly Responsive to Prayers. You have to use your imagination to fill in the blanks, which I kinda like. Anyway, we continue on to the story of Eastern Wonderland, where Reimu, coming home from a training session, finds her shrine hoarded with ghosts and yokai. She's pretty happy as she can finally put her training to the test. With the help of her turtle, Genji, she rides on the flying turtle to go and solve the problem. She encounters many enemies like the Bakabake that look like Mariabus, and then a literal tank which is built by local engineer Rika Kawashiro. Just kidding, it's just Rika. They both fight, but Rika's engineering was on par with Devonian engineering, aka they were both crap. Rika tries to lure Reimu into a trap, but Reimu doesn't fall for it. Later, Reimu encounters Meira, who wants to obtain the power of the quote-unquote Hakure for herself, whatever that means. After entering the world of fantasies, which Genji describes the world as locked between Gensokyo, which is their world, and Makai, which is Shinto Hell. In the fantasy world, Reimu encounters the 5 magic stones and defeats them like an Instagram girl breaking historic landmarks at a national park. After that, Reimu is assumed to have entered Reimaden, where she encounters Matenshi, someone that people don't care about a lot, and Marisa Kurosame, whom many people care about. Also Mima too. Mima gives a monologue about her wanting to get revenge on humanity, and then sends out her apprentice in training, Marisa Kurosame, to fight Reimu. We should remember that Marisa is not very strong in this canon, so Reimu defeats her. After that, Reimu faces Mima. Mima doesn't really want to fight, but Reimu wanted to end her. Mima explains what the Hakure's true power is, to control Yin Yang orbs, which feeds off the user's powers, so it's basically a JoJo stan. Mima later reveals that she never wanted to gain that power, so I'm not even sure why she mentioned that whole monologue, but it explains Meira's arc. This time around, I will mention all the endings that happen. A month after the game, Reimu's just vibing until she finds out that Mima escaped from her yokai seal, so she sets off again to fight her and find out what the power of the Yin Yang orbs are. Depending on the ending, it explains what the orbs are. In the A ending, the ability is to eat candy and not get fat. Reimu and Genji believes that the enemies really wanted this power for whatever reason. Reimu then goes to a store and gets some candy and sweets. In the B ending, the ability is to smell like your favorite scent. I don't know how this power could even be useful, but Genji suggested various things to do with this power. Later, Reimu goes to bed smelling like strawberries. In the C ending, the ability is to turn into a cat. Genji believes that the enemies were cat lovers, so that's why they wanted the Yin Yang orbs. Later, Reimu turns into a cat too, which is pretty cute since I'm a cat lover. In the bad endings, Marisa, Mima, and all the other bosses are forcing training on Reimu, and it is described that the methods are quite brutal. Yeah, in the Windows games, whatever character you get selected gets sad and then the incident isn't resolved in the bad endings. But in this game, it's literally Reimu getting tortured and screaming for help. Kinda dark. Now before I move on, I think we should talk about the extra stage story, which actually takes place a month before the events of Story of Eastern Wonderland. For whatever reason, Rika lured Reimu into a trap, which somehow worked, and with the help of Evil Eye Sigma, they try to kill Reimu. Rika gets defeated though, and that's where Story of Eastern Wonderland ends. Let's move on to my favorite PC-98 game, Phantasmagoria Dimensional Dream. Before the main events of the game, two lads named Yumemi Okazaki and Chiyori Katishirakawa built a space-traveling ship called the Probability Space Hypervessel and use it to go to Gensokyo. Yumemi wanted to go there so that she can prove that magic is real and disprove whatever the quote-unquote unified theory is, unquote. Reimu is wandering around the shrine, and then she finds out that there are ruins outside the shrine, and sees that Mima has escaped from her seal again. Marisa Kurosama then explains what happened. There are a bunch of characters that you can play in this game with their own stories, so I'll just go through Reimu and Marisa's scenario. They travel through the game and face various foes like Ellen, Kotohime, Kana Anabaral, Rikako Sakura, and various Bakabaka and Mario Moon enemies. In the ruins, you will fight Chiyori first and then fight Yumemi. Yumemi wanted to knock out the character you were playing as and then take them to the real world to prove her theory. Yumemi did promise that she could grant a wish if she was defeated by the character you played as. When she got defeated, Chiyori passed out pamphlets with false information on them. Apparently if you played as Yumemi and Chiyori, you will fight each other for whatever reason, but it returns to normal after a few stages. After Yumemi and Chiyori got defeated, they take the space hypervessel back to the real world, and Sheila laments that she was born in the real world and can't use magic. The character you chosen gets a wish in the end, and it goes like this. Reimu wants to clean up the shrine, so Yumemi gives her a robot named Multi from Touhou, or that is what she was implied to be. After that practical joke, Yumemi gives her Rikoto. Reimu finds out that Rikoto is bad at cleaning, so she locks her in the closet forever in the shrine. Mima wants Yumemi to stop the moon so that night will last forever. Yumemi places the moon in geosynchronous orbit, which leads to eternal moon. So with that, she goes and teases Reimu as per usual. As a side note, Yumemi claims she can't do magic, yet she's able to place the moon in geosynchronous orbit. I think she's pretty freaking magical. For Marisa's ending, Yumemi and Chiyori believe that Marisa wanted to be her slave, but Marisa wishes for a weapon from the real world, so Yumemi gives her a small ICBM missile called Mimi-chan, although they don't know how to use the missile, they just gave it to her. Ellen wishes to open a store called Fluffy Ellen's Magic Shop, so Yumemi and Chiyori build it on the Hakure Shrine grounds, which Reimu wasn't too happy about. Kotohime wants the two to leave, but then wishes for Reimu herself. She wished for Reimu so that she can lock someone in a jail cell, as there aren't many suspicious people around nowadays. Kana Anabarao was a poltergeist of a certain mansion, so she wishes to move to somewhere new. So she moves to the Hakure Shrine where she haunts Reimu while she's asleep. Rikako Hasakura wishes she had knowledge of science from the outside world. She mentions that the outside world has technology 5 centuries more advanced than that in Gensokyo, so Yumemi gives her a science book. Thanks to that, Rikako uses the book to become a famous scientist in Gensokyo. Maybe. And in the final ending, Chiyori and Yumemi present their findings to the academy that they attended, but they got expelled from the academy and it's unknown where they're at now. Hopefully they're not on the streets of Tokyo. Let's move on to Touhou 4, Lotus Land story, where we see Reimu getting to be bored. Suddenly, yokai appear and trash the shrine. Reimu gets angry and decided to exterminate the invaders, but the amount of yokai was too great. She figured out that the yokai was coming from a lake on top of the mountain, so she decided to stop the flow of the yokai and save the shrine. Marisa Kurosama, however, at the same time, senses that there is a great energy below the mountain lake and goes toward it herself, as she wants to have the power for herself. As per Reimu's scenario, they find a local mailing lookalike named Orange who is flying around the mountains. They beat her up but then encounter local vampire Kurumi who claim to be the guardian of the lake, and you fight her twice before killing her. Then, Reimu finds an island at the center of the lake, and at the end of the island, Reimu encounters Mugen-kan, which is a mansion where the rest of the game takes place. Outside the mansion, they encounter the most overshadowed character of all time, Ellie. And she's overshadowed because, the stupid Bad Apple song is kind of overrated. Ellie explains that they are within a boundary between the real world and the fantasy world, which was not described as Gensokyo, at least according to the wiki. Depending on the character that you're playing as, she will explain to the other character, Marisa if you're playing as Reimu and vice versa, that you already defeated Ellie, and you have entered a mansion. After surviving the attacks of the mansion's members, Reimu finds a chamber and accuses Marisa of planning something bad, and Marisa finds that a bit offensive, and they duel. Yeah, they even dueled before a perishable night. That's pretty cool. Reimu wins and she demands her to leave. Reimu accidentally awakens Flower Power Lady Yuka Kazami, who has an ultra powerful attack. After Reimu defeats her, Yuka flees the area and then Reimu goes after her, and that is where the final battle takes place. Reimu then beats up Yuka and that's where the game ends. By the way, do you know how Yuka has Master Spark attack? I have this theory that Marisa is canonically the one who fought Yuka, and she gained the Master Spark from her like a Pokemon. Sometime after beating up Yuka, both the characters are bored and stumble into another strange world where they meet up with twin sisters Mugetsu and Gengetsu. Although they both fight, according to the wiki, it was a pointless affair as there was no explanation or context for why they went to the extra stage. And seeing how lazy Zun is with the PC-98 era, I have my doubts that we'll see an explanation for this anytime soon. Now we move on to the final PC-98 game, Mystic Square. For whatever reason, a horde of yokai and demons are leaving Makai and heading for Gensokyo. Reimu had a lot of extermination to do, and she tried her best but got tired and frustrated. She tracks down that the invasion is coming from, quote-unquote, the cave in which the door to Makai is said to be, quote-unquote, which lies behind the shrine. She believes that it is her duty to root out all evil that caused out this mess. Marisa had also known about Reimu's plan, and so she wants to come along her way so that she can take the unique powers she may encounter along the way for herself. Mima and Yuka go, but for unrelated reasons. As per Reimu's scenario, in the cave, she finds the gatekeeper Makai, Sada. She was not pleased with Reimu's desire to go to Makai, so they fight, but you know, Reimu wins. Later on, she finds a demon traveling in the opposite direction named Luis and defeats her too. When Reimu was inside the Makai, she encountered a dark city where she found Alice Margatroyd, who attacks Reimu with her dolls. After defeating her, you go away from the city and go to another fortress in the distance where you find Yuki and Mai, whom try to stop you but to no avail. Inside the fortress called Pandemonium, you encounter our favorite local god Shinki, who informs you that the demon invasion was totally caused at fault of the civilian travel agency that is arranging the tours against Sokyo, and that Shinji couldn't do anything about that. Reminds me of a certain invasion going on right now. Anyway, after she leaves, we encounter the cooler Sakuya, Yumeko. Despite not being able to stop time, she can use swords instead of knives, which I find that to be pretty nice. After defeating her, Reimu finally gets to fight Shinki again, whom explains that she was the god and creator of Makai itself. She decides to look into the Tours board issue, but only after punishing Reimu for coming to her. Depending on which character you played as, Reimu demands that the Makai people stop coming to Gensokyo. Shinki promises that she'll do something about it, but in the end brings all the demons to the shrine and left it will always be busy at the shrine. Note. Yeah, sounds like a politician. Marisa doesn't really know why she came to Makai in the first place, but she uses the excuse that she wanted to become a new god of Makai. After learning some new techniques, she was able to exterminate the demons around the shrine, which is pretty cool. Mima lied about herself being a god about the human world, and then leaves Makai because she was bored. Then she decides to dress herself in a sheet and haunt the shrine. Yuka was also bored, but then explains that she likes to pick on weaklings, so she's a bully basically. She decided to learn how to use magic, but just doesn't know how to get it. Marisa then worries about how powerful Yuka could be if she knew how to use magic. After the endings though, Reimu encounters Alice Margatroyd again but in a different land. Alice now had a large grimoire that grants her various new magical powers, and she challenges her to a rematch. Now, of course, Alice gets defeated and laments about how she couldn't beat Reimu. After defeating her, depending on the character you choose, Reimu forces her to clean the shrine. Marisa takes Alice's grimoire and wants to learn all the magic inside it, which is said to be impossible for humans to learn. Mima makes her maid, and Yuka takes her for magical training, but was able to return, but senses something Yuka was watching her. And after the ending of Alice's extra story, that's where the PC-98 canon ends. Yeah, I'm serious, that's where it all ends. The PC-98 story has a few plot holes that contradict the Windows canon, like Makai being portrayed differently and Mystic Square and think it's Touhou 12, when Marisa learned to use star magic, and where Yuka lives, because in PC-98 canon, she lives in Mugenkan, but in the Windows canon, she lives in the quote-unquote Garden of the Sun. However, I remember there being an interview with Zun saying that the PC-98 story is canon, but if there are any consistencies, the Windows canon is the true canon, and for that, I guess that's where the video ends. For now. Yeah, bye.